Calm down, I'm a doctor. Maid saves millionaire in the middle of a heart attack. The grand penthouse on the 32nd floor of the Lexington Towers gleamed with polished marble, crystal chandeliers, and silence, too much silence for a man used to commanding boardrooms. Ethan Callaway, a self-made millionaire and CEO of a major tech firm, slumped into his leather armchair, one hand clutching his chest. He'd always ignored the nagging pain. Meetings, deadlines, deals always came first. But today, his heart had other plans. Across the room, unseen and unnoticed, Maria quietly dusted the bookshelf. A live-in maid from El Salvador, Maria had worked in the Callaway household for only 3 months. To Ethan, she was just another face in the background, someone he barely nodded to in passing. But in that moment, she became the only person standing between him and death. A thud echoed as Ethan collapsed to the floor, gasping. Panic flickered in his eyes. His lips moved, but no sound came. Maria dropped her duster, rushing to his side. She had seen this before, years ago, back in her home country during her medical training, a career she'd been forced to abandon after violence took her husband and she fled for a better life for her son. "Senor Callaway, look at me," she said, crouching beside him. His skin had gone pale, sweat poured from his forehead, and he could barely move. "Calm down, I'm a doctor." Maria shouted instinctively, her voice filled with authority, though her heart pounded. Ethan blinked, barely conscious. Maria's hands moved fast. She loosened his collar, elevated his legs slightly, and monitored his pulse. "You're having a heart attack," she said, reaching for the phone in her apron. But she knew, every second mattered. She ran to the kitchen, grabbed the aspirin she had seen him keep near the fridge for headaches, and rushed back. "Chew this," she ordered, placing it in his mouth and helping him swallow. Then, placing the call to 911, she rattled off the symptoms, his vital signs, and his address like she never forgot who she was before scrubbing floors. As sirens wailed in the distance, Ethan's breathing evened out. He stared at her, barely able to speak. "You, a doctor?" he croaked. Maria nodded, her voice softening. "I was. In El Salvador. But life, it had other plans." The paramedics arrived moments later. Maria stepped aside, giving them a clear rundown like a seasoned ER nurse. The professionals exchanged surprised glances but followed her lead. Hours later, in a quiet hospital room filled with monitors and soft beeping, Ethan opened his eyes. Beside him sat a nurse, and across the room, to his astonishment, Maria stood quietly, still in her faded apron. "Why are you still here?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You have no family nearby." "I thought maybe you'd need someone," she replied, modestly. Ethan stared at her, the weight of his assumptions pressing down. This woman, who he had barely acknowledged, had just saved his life with calm, precision, and heart. "You're not just a maid," he whispered. She smiled faintly. "No one is just anything, Mr. Callaway." The next week, Ethan returned home, alive, but deeply changed. His days of living fast and ignoring people were over. And Maria. Maria was no longer invisible. A week later, Maria was called into the living room, nervous to be summoned formally. Ethan stood, still frail but smiling. "I made a few calls," he began. "You're registered to begin the U.S. Medical Board certification process again. I'm paying for it. You shouldn't be cleaning houses when you have hands meant to heal." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll become the doctor the world still needs," Ethan said gently. "You already saved one life. Imagine how many more you can save." Word spread quickly. Media outlets picked up the story. Maid saves CEO, turns out she was a doctor all along. But for Ethan and Maria, the real story was simpler, the recognition of worth, the revival of purpose, and a bond formed not through status or success, but through a heartbeat nearly lost, and a hand that refused to let go. Months later, Maria walked across a stage in a white coat, her U.S. medical license finally in hand. In the front row, Ethan stood with her son, clapping with pride. Sometimes, it's not who you see as important, it's who sees you when it matters most. And sometimes, the strongest heartbeats come not from boardrooms or bank accounts, but from acts of quiet courage in the spaces in between. The world changes not only by the powerful, but by the kind.